I'm joined now by Mark Davids, the Managing Director of Motswedi Economic Transformation Specialists. Mark, welcome to the IRFA 2025 conference.
Great, Leon, thank you, and great for having me.
You're definitely one of the better dressed attendees today.
Yeah, no, look, brought my best suit out for you today.
So I've been watching you working the floor and speaking to many, many people. Explain to me your role here, what you ultimately here to achieve, and what is your message to the attendees of this conference?
No, thanks for that, Leon. So my role here today is to represent Motswedi Economic Transformation Specialists. I'm speaking to boards of trustee members, trustees who are interested in driving economic transformation. That is the number one belief philosophy that we as Motswedi see changing South Africa for the better, for a future that I think we all need to retire into.
So economic transformation are fancy words.
Yeah.
So for our audience, perhaps you can just unpack and explain that a little bit, and indeed, why is that so important in the context of South Africa?
So I think the place to start is to think about a South Africa 20 years from today. What type of South Africa do you want to retire into? Do you want your children to start growing into? And that for us is the question that we asked ourselves is, what does this South Africa look like in 20 years' time? And we believe that on the current trajectory, the direction we're going is not a great outcome. We need to see much more solution-driven thinking around bringing more companies into the mainstream. And that is various companies. That is bringing into play private markets. That is bringing into play new ideas around black-owned asset managers into the mainstream of financial services. And in that way, we start to see more financial inclusion, and that brings more people into the financial services industry, and that then creates employment, and that is what South Africa needs. We need to solve three of the biggest issues that South Africa faces. Number one is our poverty crisis. Number two is our unemployment crisis, and number three is inequality. Those are the big three issues we need to solve.
So you're pulling on the heartstrings, and I fully understand that, but at the end of the day, this is pension money, it's people's savings. We've got to ensure that their assets grow sufficiently so that they can retire comfortably. Isn't this just philanthropy that you're talking about?
Absolutely not. The way I would think about it is the question around, and every board of trustee needs to make sure that they deliver returns for their members. That is the number one responsibility. But the question is, in 20 years' time, if you delivered great returns, what about the environment that that member is retiring into? So this is not about pulling on heartstrings. This is the reality that members face when they retire in 20 years' time. So the question is, how do we deliver good returns, but at the same time deliver economic transformation? And that is what we believe at Motswedi can be done. And we are doing it every single day.
And is it indeed practical? So are we able to execute on this agenda for customers?
So absolutely. And I think the biggest issue is saying that the narrative about risk, I think, is something we need to be very clear about. We need to understand that risk exists across all investments. What we need to understand is we need to clarify and quantify what those risks are. We need to identify them and then say, how do we mitigate for all of these risks? And if you as a board of trustee member are able to do that, what that then means is your eyes are wide open when you're making an investment and you're looking and seeing, I know exactly what the risks are, and you're then able to make that investment, and in that way know that should something unexpected happen, you've already quantified and identified that risk, and mitigating factors are in place. And in that way, when those risks do manifest themselves, if they do, you've already got the mitigating factors in place to prevent the potential negative impact that risk may have brought.
So the theme for this conference is building resilience. Yeah. What is the role of an industry body like the Institute of Retirement Funds in that sense?
So the role of the retirement body is exceptionally important because their role is around educating trustees. So today, in all of the plenary rooms, the sessions that are taking place, the education of trustees is super important for them to understand the role that they play in the future of South Africa, their members, the responsibility that they hold. When they engage with in the board of trustee meetings, when they're engaging with their service providers, is saying, and boards of trustees to be the ones driving the conversation. And I think that's where industry bodies like IRFA have got a very strong responsibility to explain to boards of trustees the role that they play and how they can drive behavior.
So you unpacked economic transformation, but the word transformation is in there, and people see transformation as being around the employment equity, which is not what economic transformation is. So let's make sure we have that very clear.
Yeah, so economic, and the way I'd like to think about it is economic transformation and transformation. So economic transformation is much more of a structural change in the South African environment, as opposed to transformation, which has gotten some really negative connotations that have started to become associated with it. So some of the negatives have been around individuals that have become very wealthy as a result of transformation. And what we're saying is economic transformation is much more structural changes, which incorporates financial inclusion, which incorporates the idea of bringing more businesses and entrepreneurial businesses into the mainstream. And in that way, increasing the size of the pie, if I can use that analogy.
And making ultimately that pie accessible for all.
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, Mark, I wish you all the best in that endeavor. I think it's exceptionally important in South Africa. Any particular talks you're looking forward to?
So I actually just sat in one earlier on fixed income and the future-proofing, future-proofing your pension fund. And I thought that was quite an interesting one. The conversation was certainly robust, and I think some of the key issues which I thought were perhaps missing was around this exact conversation around in 20 years' time, what are the practical steps we need to take now to make sure that environment where our members retire into is one where that retirement pot that they've saved can actually be used effectively and look after them.
So if anybody wants to explore that discussion with you further, how can they get hold of you?
So please join me. You can access us on our website, Motswedi. That's www.motswedi.co.za. I'm on LinkedIn, and you'll see many of the articles and surveys that we put out into the market. You can find all of them online.
Great. That's Mark Davids, the Managing Director of Motswedi. Mark, thank you so much.
Great. Thanks a lot. Cheers.